If you're looking for a 14-inch laptop available in a range of specs with a pretty killer keyboard, a pretty killer screen, and a pretty killer chassis, we should talk. I've got Lenovo's new 9i, it's the 7th gen. Yes, Lenovo has the most confusing names on earth. 7i, 9i, Gen 2, Gen 3, Carbon X. Dude, I don't get it. Mr. Lenovo, just make it easy for us. There's a reason why Apple wins. Like, just give me a few to choose from, not 900 different variations of the same thing. Even if you go Google right now, Lenovo 9i, I would wager $5 that the first result is not the new one that I'm playing with in the studio, but probably last year's or maybe the year before's. I don't know. We've got the 9i in the house, and I got some interesting kind of feedback on this because I was excited to get this laptop, okay? We couldn't get it quick enough. First thing you're gonna notice here is the look and feel of this chassis, and it is different. It's a pretty thin machine, and what they've done is they have bucked the trend of everybody else, where we've got these sharp edges and we chamfer things out so that the front lip feels really thin. These guys have instead gone for a very rounded kind of feel. On the base of the unit here, it reminds me of the old iPhone when it first came out. That thick, rounded kind of curve. It's a beautiful shiny silver. If you like shiny, you're gonna like it. Feels great under the thumb, and it definitely wows, right? It pops. I mean, the reflections just shine off it. It's a good look. In the words of Natalie Portman, when Thor gets his armor back on from the original movie. Because I'm a Thor fan and Thor 4 is about to come out, so, you know, it is what it is. Go watch the first one if you haven't watched it for a while.
So is this how you normally look?
More or less.
It's a good look.
I like it, but here's what's interesting. It's not a fat laptop, okay? It's not that thick, it's not that heavy, but if you are like me, when I use a laptop, I tend to rest my thumb on the front of it. You know, if I'm moving around on a trackpad or I'm reaching up for maybe a key, I'll just naturally rest my palm on my thumb. And because of the curve, it's so much comfier. You don't get that sharp edge that you get on some of the other devices. MacBooks are still pretty sharp. Even some of Lenovo's other devices we're going to talk about in a minute have that same sharpness. This doesn't. But the strangest thing happens. It makes the laptop feel thicker than it really is. It's voodoo. I don't know what to tell you. It's like magic. It's not that thick, but when you rest your hand here, it feels that thick because my muscle memory tells me that when I'm resting my thumb on the front of this device, it should be thin. It's like the iMac old gen 27, where they made the edges so thin and then the thing curves all the way to the back where it's super fat. But because the edges were thin, everybody thinks it's like a super thin computer. And it was like an optical illusion. For Lenovo, it's an optical illusion the opposite way that makes it feel worse. So, anywho, the keyboard. I don't say this very often because if you watch my videos, you know my favorite keyboards are still the Surface keyboards, although there are some great ones out there. This bad boy surprised me, and I've got a love-hate relationship with Lenovo. Why do you have to insist on putting these extra keys down the side? I just need a keyboard that's in the middle, that's symmetrical. The space bar's in the middle of the trackpad's in the middle of the screen. It's not too much to ask. Everybody else can do it, but Lenovo doesn't. They put the page up and down keys in all kinds of crazy places, and they do what... Anyway, we have got some extra keys here. Delete is not above backspace. That doesn't sound like a big deal, but your muscle memory will make it one, I'm telling you. Then they've got this kind of speed button that you can turn the performance up and down. This weird button for changing your background when you've got your webcam on. A sound button, press it. I mean, it goes to night mode. It comes back from night mode, but I don't know that I really needed a button to change between the two. It's fine. And then the fingerprint sensor. It's one of the better Lenovo keyboards that I have used as far as their crazy, weird key thing goes. But I still find it strange because I'm so used to just a standard centralized keyboard that Dell managed to pull off, Microsoft managed to pull off, Apple manages to pull it off, HP manages to pull it off. I get that you want to add some extra value, but it's confusing and it is tricky and it catches me out. I have literally been using this all day for a couple of days trying to get work done on it. And it's not all the time. I've started to adjust a little bit, but we all go across multiple devices nowadays. A lot of us have docks, we have regular keyboards. It's surprising how used to keyboards your fingers get, and it will catch you out. If you can live with it, dude, live with it. The keys themselves, the press of the keys is lovely. The actual key press might be one of my favorites. It's got that soft kind of gentle, it's like the kitchen cabinet drawers that when you close them, that last little bit, they close themselves. You know what I'm talking about? Instead of it just slamming when you push it, it goes really fast and then it stops and then it just buffers for that last half inch. It's kind of like that on these keys. Beautiful action, beautiful travel, not too shallow, not too deep, really nice keyboard. But then Mr. Lenovo does it again. Why can't I just have straight keys? Why do I have to have little kind of curves on the bottom of them that loses size? Like, Apple made their keys slightly bigger to make it easier for people to type. This makes it slightly smaller because of the shaping of the keys. I like the little Amazon smile or little happy face or whatever you want to call it. When you're looking at the keys, you can see it here. Look, you see how it's like curved at the bottom and it's straight across the top? I mean, it's interesting. It's like what little daisy chain things that you used to make out of paper when you were at school, or at least you did if you were at school like me in England. I don't know whether you did in the United States of America. Nevertheless, key action is great. Trackpad, big, works really well. It picks me up. I've got a very light touch. I have no issues at all with the trackpad, but the click lets it down. It has that same hollowness, almost to the point where it reminded me of the Dell XPS and that little gap that created a rattle. I don't know that there's quite the gap there. Same issue, you can't click at the top, you can click at the bottom, but it feels cheap. It does. I'm sorry, you're in a world where you're competing with $999 MacBook Pros that have haptic trackpads. Even Microsoft Surface Laptop Studios have haptic trackpads. Everybody's going to get to haptic eventually because it's much nicer, it's less moving parts. In the world of trackpads, there are better ones. Keyboard, love the travel on the keys and the action. Trackpad, don't love the travel or the action. Definitely lets it down. It works and it's functional, no issues. I just don't like it. The screen is another interesting oddity. Touch, you've got everything that you're going to want here. Let's pull up a web page for you. And I don't know, let's go check out the news. Let's see if we've got a verdict on the Amber Heard case with Johnny Depp, because today is the day that it's supposed to come out. So Google News, got your touch screen, all the things that you would expect. It's it's high gloss, it's very glossy. It is very glossy. You better like gloss. I like it, and I think it's nice. I also like the way they've done this here with the webcam. Instead of doing Apple's notch thing and making the screen just look plain stupid, they've gone the opposite direction. And if you look at the bevel here on the case, the bevel actually shrinks away so that the webcam actually goes up rather than down. So instead of going down into the screen where I'm working, it's going up into the bezel. It's a really nice touch. The chassis itself doesn't change, but you definitely feel the lip as you run your finger across. It's nice. I like it. I like it a lot better than the notch. And look, the screen's nice. Now, this is a 1920 screen. This is like a full high def. Obviously, the screen ratio is not 16:9. Thank you, Lenovo, 1610. So it's actually a 1920 by 1200 just to get that extra height. So perfectly acceptable screen. I love the 14-inch screen size. I think every small screen laptop in the 13-ish inch range should stretch to 14. I think 14 is the new 13. Thinner bezels means that we don't get a bigger device. It just feels like there's so much more working area to get stuff done. I would never want to go back to a 13.3. In fact, when I use my MacBook 13.3, I genuinely feel like it's a little bit small now, and I never used to feel that way because I'm getting used to some of these larger screens, the 14-inch MacBook Pro, now the 14-inch Lenovo, the 14.4-inch Surface Laptop Studio that I still think might be the absolute perfection for sweet spots on a screen for portability and still being big enough to do stuff when you want to get it done. They do an alternative, and it's really interesting. This arrived to me last week. When I bought it, it was $10.99. By the time it was delivered, it was $9.99. Today, it's not available at all in that spec, And now the only one available is $1,759 with a 4K OLED screen. So let's talk about configurations here, because this is a bit of a weird one. This model that I tested was an i7. It is a 12th gen chip, so it's the newest with the efficiency cores and the performance cores that are supposed to help with battery life. Spoiler alert, they don't. It's the Evo platform, but it's 8 gig, 256. Why? Why would you do that? Don't you watch my videos? 8256 is like so last decade, dude. This should be at least a 512 or 16 or both. I get that it was $999, but then push the price up a little bit. But it would appear on Lenovo's website that the choices were, up until a couple of days ago, I'm assuming they're going to get these back in stock, you could go $999 for an i7 with 8 gig 256. So low-end spec but high-end chip, just put an i5 in it. Or you can have the same i7 chip with 16 gig, 1 terabyte, so no 512 option, and an OLED 4K screen at $1,750. Call me crazy, but that's a bit of a swing. Like, if I want a little bit more performance than $1,000 is gonna give me, I don't know that I'm gonna jump right the way to $1,750. Because at $999, dude, this is pretty killer. You know, I'm comparing to a Microsoft Surface laptop, a little bit thinner, a little bit lighter, 12th gen versus 11. I'm comparing to a MacBook Pro, a little bit thinner, a little bit lighter, a little bit better battery life, but it's Apple Mac OS and that might not work for you all. It's also almost 2-year-old hardware and they're gonna be changing it soon, so you might not wanna buy that. At $1,759, dude, you just opened up a whole new world for me. Now I'm competing with everything. I mean, you're talking about the Dell XPS 13 Plus in OLED for $1699 with 16 gig i7 512, but it looks pretty impressive with that futuristic keyboard, the trackpad that disappears. I haven't got one yet, so I can't do a review on it because apparently they're really backlogged, but as soon as I do get one, you'll be the first to know. I can even get an XPS 15 for not much more than $1,759. I could get a Surface Laptop Studio. I could get a MacBook Pro for not too much more, or if it's on sale, actually at the $1,750 mark, and it's been there multiple times as a 14-inch. So Lenovo pushed themselves into a different bracket with that high-end OLED screen, and I haven't seen it, I haven't played with it. You know I love OLED screens. If you watch these videos, I'm sure it looks magnificent. I just think you're asking yourself a different question at that price point than you are at that $999, $1099 price point of the spec that I'm using here. How does it sound? Let me try and find some royalty-free music to play for you. So that's 50% on the speakers. I'm gonna turn it up for you. Not bad. Not a lot of bass, not really a whole lot of mid-range. Again, for a $999-ish laptop, yeah, sound pretty good. For a $1,750 laptop, I think you're gonna get left behind. Two different people buying these things at those kind of price points, so just keep that in mind. I left the best till last for you here. Let's talk about battery life. I was optimistically stunned the first few hours I used it, because it appeared as though this battery was doing something magical and barely moving. I used it for like 30, 40 minutes and I was at 96%. And I'm thinking, holy moly, finally, somebody got it right with this new 12th generation chip, and they really are efficient and they really don't suck battery life, and life is gonna be good for Mikey again. And then as the day went on, I was proved wrong. By the end of the day, I was dropping about 6% in less than 30 minutes, which gives me a 12% in an hour. This is light everyday work. Web browsing, working in Google Suite in a browser. I'm an entrepreneur, talk about that a lot on the channel. This is a channel from an entrepreneurial perspective, so no Lightroom, no Photoshop, no video editing, normal day-to-day stuff. What is wrong with the Windows world right now? I do not want 6 hours out of my laptop. I need more than that. I don't want to sit down at 15% and start sweating because my charger's not right next to me. That's not the world we live in anymore, folks. And that's why Apple are killing it with the MacBooks right now and the MacBook Air. Windows needs to pick their game up. This is not the machine to do that. I suspect some of it is the i7, although again, this is the Evo platform. This is not the power-hungry H series. I was getting about 10% an hour from an XPS with a H series. I know it's got a bigger battery, but I think 10% an hour is the bare minimum for normal everyday use. And I gotta tell you, the brightness on this screen, if you think, well, I'll just turn it down to save that battery life, you are gonna be surprised because let me show you, okay? This is full brightness that you're looking at right now. 1 down, 2 down, 3 down. Dude, 3 clicks and it's like I'm at half brightness already. If I go all the way down to half, it's really like, I gotta make an effort to read. You go down to a third or a fourth, it might as well be off. Like, you're not working at that. It's gone. So I can just about see the screen there, but I genuinely can't necessarily read the small text. I could not work with that screen brightness. Sorry, caught it on the trackpad. Remember when I said the trackpad was awesome? Apparently, a little too sensitive there for my fat palm of the hand. A lot of people run these tests on battery and they say like half screen brightness, 35% screen brightness. You are not going to be able to use this machine at 35% screen brightness. Not unless you've got eyes like a bat, and I don't. Normal, sane people with regular eyesight are going to need this thing turned up to 60, 70% screen brightness at a minimum for normal work inside of a building. Outside, you're going to be at 100% because it's so reflective. And that's going to kill the life of the battery. Is it worse than other 12th gen machines? From what I've seen, not a lot worse, but it really doesn't even feel quite the same. I feel as though even my Galaxy Book 2, and I'm going to go check that video out in just a second to make sure I'm not telling you lies, but I don't think I am. Even that was around the 10% an hour mark, and it was super light, super thin, and it was also an i7 chip. So I think what I'm concluding here when it comes to 12th gen processors and battery life, if you've been holding out for the 12th gen to be the savior of your mobile computing day, it's not there for you. I don't think it's going to happen. Maybe next time, but I kind of feel like we keep saying that and next time isn't coming. All that's happening is Windows and Intel are driving more people to the world of Apple because of battery life, battery life, battery life. We have an expectation now to be able to go to work and not carry a charger with us. Yes, you might be docked, you might not care. If that's you, all power to you. If you're not and you need that battery to get you through the day, it's still an issue. It hasn't been fixed. 12th gen is not going to make it happen for you. So let's wrap this up. Lenovo 9i Gen 7. I thought it was a pretty decent deal, but I was out the other day and I saw this. Interestingly, this is a 7i, so it's a lower spec than the 9i. Also, 12th gen chip. It's a little fatter. It's not quite as pretty on the sides if you compare these two side by side. Still got USB-C, 2 of them on one side. I've got a USB-A and a headphone jack on the other. Yes, I do have a headphone jack and USB-C on the right side of the Lenovo 9i, 2 USB-Cs and a USB-A on the left side. So ports slightly better on the 9i than the 7i. What was interesting is the 7i, I was in Costco, folks, okay? I was just driving down the street and I was goofing off. So 7i, 9i, both 1610 screens. You can see here the differences as you're using the machine. The bottom of the 9i starts higher and finishes higher. Physically, it's a slightly bigger machine. But I was in Costco and I saw this and it was $11.99. It's the same i7 chip as the 9i, but it's 16 gig versus 8 gig. It's 1 terabyte versus 256. So I originally paid $10.99 for this, then got it on sale at $9.99. $100, $200 difference. Double the memory, 16 gig, 1 terabyte drive, and here's the kicker, 2.8K screen, full high def. So basically a 4K screen. I know it's not 4K, don't leave me a bunch of comments hating on me. Look, I like that you subscribe. I like that you leave me nice comments. I love that you all join in, and I still literally comment back myself to everyone. So it's not staffed out. It's still little old Mikey. There's only so many hours in the day. I'm doing the best I can. 2.8K screen. So you are essentially getting almost the $1,750 9i for $1,200. Slightly different chassis, not quite 4K, but still a high PPI. Your eye's not really going to see the difference. This is where it gets confusing, folks. This is why companies like Lenovo don't make a bigger splash in the mainstream. I'm a tech reviewer and I'm confused. How are you supposed to make decisions? How is everybody else supposed to make decisions if we're all confused? It's too many options. It's slightly fatter. It sits slightly taller. The screen does go flat, which is really cool. Really cool. Because sometimes I'll put it in a stand and I want it a little further back than it can go. But then the 9i comes along and says, okay, but hang on a second. I don't just go flat. Who's your daddy? And what does he do? I go all the way around. You're going to have to make your choices, folks. For about the same kind of money, you can have a decent laptop with 16 gig, 1 terabyte, i7 12th gen, with a lay flat screen of 2.8K, LCD, LED, whatever you want to call it, and it's a pretty decent machine. Or you can spend a little bit less and you can get half the RAM, 1/4 of the storage, a regular high def screen, but you can get a slightly nicer chassis and you can get a 360 flipper. The choice is yours. I don't know what to tell you. The trackpad is definitely better on the 9i. I didn't really like the trackpad on the 7i. It didn't work as nicely, a little bit more sensitive, and it just did weird things. You click on something and it's like shimmying away somewhere else. Ask me your questions, leave me some comments. I wish I could be more help on this one. If I was choosing between these two, I genuinely don't know what I would do. I like the chassis of this more, and I think the prettiness would probably get me, but I would use it every day thinking for $100 or so, I could have had a whole lot more power. Till next time, subscribe and be amazing.